It's been a very long year. Like, holy crap. But here we are, getting close to the end of it, and here's an opportunity to enjoy some relaxing one-off games in relative peace. Just like always, this rendition of Games Under 5 Hours takes a look at a whole lot of indie games that can all be finished in, you guessed it, under 5 hours. But unlike usual, this is going to be an almost universally super chill time. Whether you want to build a quaint oceanside village or direct nature's slow reclamation of man's world, almost all of these games are all about relaxing, creating, and vibing in peace. So get ready to unlock your inner zen. But before we get to that, there is something extremely cool that I have to stop and nerd out about, and that's 10-minute games. 10MG is exactly what it says on the tin, a collection of 10 games that each take roughly 10 minutes, give or take. It cuts across all genres, covering everything from dungeon crawlers to platformers to visual novels, and includes all tones, some games exploring serious issues like a couple struggling with COVID lockdown, to whatever this bizarreness is. It's basically a mini bundle of itch.io games. Not every game is an absolute winner, but every game does try to do something interesting and experimental. Slasher Interrupted has you trying to tell a campfire story, except your damn plot keeps getting hijacked by the audience. Sealed Estate is a horror game with WarioWare controls that makes you every bit as fumbling as a horror movie victim. And Smiley Face is a quick transformative jaunt through a who's who of arcade and shareware classics. But my personal favorite from the pile was Cover Me in Leaves, which was essentially a short story that could have made it into any speculative fiction magazine with some absolutely stunning and surreal accompanying visuals. Even if you don't check out the whole list, give that one a look. But there's one other big reason that I'm out here shouting about this bundle of games. 10MG got launched with the express mission of trying to acclimatize people to the idea of shorter games. They have literally said that they want to move the Overton window on how long a game a consumer will willingly put down money for. It's literally the exact same mission statement my channel has, so yeah, I love the hell out of this and everything it's trying to accomplish. And for all you fellow terminally busy people who come here because you don't have time to play yet another 60-hour open-world RPG, you should too. Townscaper. Townscaper feels almost closer to a simplified developer toolkit than an actual game. It is pure creativity unleashed. You can build literally anything you put your mind to, so long as it doesn't include a straight road. Jokes aside, Townscaper is one of the most simultaneously robust and open-ended city builders I've ever seen, and it's all thanks to a really complicated hierarchy of rules playing behind the scenes that automatically molds individual buildings depending on how you shape them. You can make balconies, produce multi-tiered buildings, add in enclosed courtyards. There is a shocking amount of stuff that you can just conjure into existence in 5 minutes flat in Townscaper. You can make this, or this, or this. And no matter what the hell you build, Townscaper will make it look incredible. And while I am dearly praying that the game might sneak in a few extra tile sets so you can give each town a bit more flavor, this game is one of the most exciting canvases I've ever gotten the privilege to paint across. It does all the heavy technical work for you, but unlike most games of its ilk, it doesn't feel like any of that technical assistance comes with any real restrictions attached. You can let your imagination run wild and build almost anything you put your mind to. It only does one thing, but it does that one thing so goddamn well, and it's a creative's absolute wet dream. Townscaper isn't the only creative canvas you can paint on in this bundle, though, so let's talk about Cloud Gardens. Cloud Gardens is more structured than Townscaper, but only slightly so, as it's lenient enough that it's still more about creative expression than about actual puzzle solving. It's a game about nature reclaiming what man's left behind, with vines choking out trailer parks and trees growing at the tops of long abandoned and decaying high-rises. It's an absolutely gorgeous game, and also a pretty relaxing one. As you place more objects in a scene, they make nearby vegetation grow, and so the game is a calm procession where you first build the skeleton of the scene, then paint over it with whatever plants you like, methodically going across an area until you've completely covered it in greenery. Cloud Gardens has next to no mechanical challenge to speak of, but instead it features a creative challenge by forcing you to construct both the setting and the encroaching vegetation that will inhabit it simultaneously. Dropping objects on already grown plants will damage them and leave a big ugly hole, but you can only expand your network of greenery by placing objects nearby, so creating something that looks nice often requires a bit of planning, especially if you want to include trees that take a while to grow. Cloud Gardens isn't really interested in grading you on your performance, but unlike Townscaper, which feels like an empty canvas you can run wild on, Cloud Gardens is instead a game that satisfies the creative urge through its limitations, embracing the mindset that creativity is bred by the restrictions it has to contend with. It's admittedly a little fascinating to cover these games side by side, both of which are basically just peaceful creative sandboxes, but which come at the same concept from completely opposite ends. And both of them, I think, are pretty successful at executing their visions. Occasionally I'll come across a Cloud Gardens level that feels too small and restrictive to really do anything interesting with, and every now and then I'll stare at an empty Townscaper map unsure of what I want to make. But a vast majority of my time spent with both of these games has been an absolute joy. And if you're a fellow creatively minded individual, these are some incredible spaces that let you sculpt peacefully to your heart's content. Mixolumia. The easiest way to describe Mixolumia is that it's kind of like Tetris, except gravity drags blocks in two different directions. It's a simple concept, but the implications start getting exponentially more complicated really quickly. If I'm being honest, Mixolumia is a surprisingly hard game to wrap your head around. Not only can gravity potentially drag your blocks to either side of the board, once you let go of a piece, each individual block interacts with gravity independently, which means you have to account for where all four are going to go at the same time. And the more you manage to suss out about Mixolumia's physics, the more complicated it becomes to plan ahead and calculate a move. It's compelling, to be sure, but I still spend half my time confusedly wondering why X or Y squared didn't go where I want it to. But okay, if it's so dang confusing, what's it doing on this list? Well, one of Mixolumia's main selling points is the fact that it's also kind of a music game. The game lays down a basic beat, and every button you hit produces a note, which on paper is supposed to make a procedurally generated melody. Expressed my skepticism with this sort of design before. Ironically, I actually hold up the most recent Tetris Effect, as one of the prime examples of how this can go wrong. And yet here I am playing a Tetris-like game that does exactly what Tetris Effect did, but, good. And if you could somehow outdo Tetris, you're doing something right. Overall, Mixolumia is a great game to vibe to, and it comes with a number of different modes you can try out if a standard game starts to get old. Even if it's a little complicated to wrap your head around, if you're a fan of stuff like Tetris or Puyo Puyo, you can have a lot of fun with this one. Cellular Harvest. It's Pokemon Snap! With murder.
Aw, man!
While perhaps not as flashily animated or rendered, this is a tiny indie game on a budget, Cellular Harvest follows the same basic rhythm as Pokemon Snap. You're let loose with a camera into an alien environment, and off you go on a treasure hunt for different funny-looking animals to take pictures of. But Cellular Harvest comes with a heavy cyberpunk twist. You only get to have a fun little photo shoot on an alien world at the behest of your corporate overlords, who want you to document all those different critters you find so you can decide how to best profit from harvesting their bones, skin, and toxin glands. So off you go discovering this tiny little paradise that only you will ever get to experience, with a bit of bile resting in the back of your throat because you know exactly why you're the only one who will ever get to see it. Because the game already tells you exactly how this ends right at the start. To say much more would rob you of the full emotional ride that is Cellular Harvest, but it's a surprisingly transformative title that not only has something to say, but can also be taken as an excellent case study on how a genre's core conceits can be completely retooled to create something barely recognizable. Contrary to the fluffy, joyful nature of Pokemon Snap, Cellular Harvest is a positively seething game that isn't remotely shy about expressing its absolute contempt for the all-consuming nature of capitalism and the primary actors that drive it forward. And it's a solid little 30-minute art piece. Carrion. Jesus, can you imagine what an amazing year Devolver must be having when this isn't even the biggest hit they've published this summer? Carrion's not exactly an unknown game, but it kind of only got a week of attention before getting lost in the noise of the non-stop train of out-of-nowhere indie successes we've been enjoying pretty much since it released. So hey, here I am to remind you that Carrion exists, and it's pretty dang good. Carrion dubs itself a reverse horror game, which is another way of saying it's a power fantasy, except you're an unspeakably ugly pile of sausage meat instead of a guy with a buzz cut. You are an absurdly powerful and durable monstrosity in a world of cardboard guys with pea shooters, your 100 feelers drag you through vents and claustrophobic tunnels at an inhumanly fast pace, and if you do somehow run into something with actual teeth, there's always another path you can use to slip in behind. And once you start getting some of the more powerful endgame powers, like the ability to turn yourself into a ball of spikes, yep, pretty much any room you slither into instantly transforms into an abattoir. As far as power fantasies go, Carrion is pretty dang top-notch, particularly because it's not going all out all the time. The game has this nifty system where you can ditch bits of your body, which makes you weaker, but also gives you entirely different skills and lets you fit into smaller spaces. And so you have a lot of surprising variety. Quieter bits where you skulk around and snatch guards from behind get punctuated by the big ones, where you smash right through the front door as a big blob of meat spaghetti that don't give no fucks. And regardless of which way you're playing, the game feels wonderfully kinetic thanks to the terrifying speed you move at. 90% of fights end within seconds, and you can almost rip through the scenery faster than your own eyes can keep up with. No matter what you're doing in Carrion, you are an unstoppable red tide, momentum personified, exactly as an overwhelming monstrosity beyond mortal comprehension should feel. And like a proper power fantasy, it feels great. That's all I've got for this quarterly wrap-up, but I've covered hundreds of great short games like these, so if you want more, you know where to look. And if you really want to see content like this flourish, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Thanks for watching this far, and I'll see you all next week.